Hi, I'm Danny, and I think a less awkward way to say hello is just to put it on a slide, so we're good to go. And yeah, another one. Hi, I'm Danny, and yeah, I am a creative. I work as a graphic designer and visual artist, and yeah, I made this fun. Hi, Mom, I made something. Can you go to my Instagram as well? So yeah, I work as a graphic designer. I do font making, creative direction, packaging design, so on and so forth. I graduated last year. I think that's it.
That's what you want to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, now I'm unemployed. That's a harsher reality for saying that I go full freelance, but well, I mean, we all want the truth here, don't we? So yeah, I'm unemployed now. So yeah, traditions, we hear about it a lot. We see it on the news all the time when it comes to like cultural appropriation. I'm sorry, Katy Perry, but I've got to put you in there. Or authenticity, or folklore, mythology, or legend, history. So, what is it really? What exactly is tradition? So, when you hear the word tradition, what do you think of? Like, do you think of?
I think of bagpipes and tartans, very personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else comes to mind? Family. Yeah, there you go. So, personally, to me, I don't think tradition means anything in a way, or I don't think it is what we think it is. Is that, all right, let's break it down to smaller sections. So, I think each group of people or each country has different measurements when it comes to like measuring tradition, because we have different ethnics, we've got different area, different time period. So I think a tradition is more of a practice, like the action of handing things down from one generation to another. So if a tradition is a practice, then we have to always ask the questions, who is it practiced by? Where it is practiced? When does it? Like, when is it practiced as well? Then it comes down to a question of when does it play back until, like, at what point or like how many generations does it become tradition? Or if it's not long enough, is it just a practice? So, and then when does it become authentic? Because we see that a lot when we go out, like authentic Mexican food, authentic Italian food, but what does it mean really to be authentic? Like, is it your grandmother's cooking, or is it something from the book? Or yeah, so when does it date back until? Because then we all know, for example, we all know Italian food for doing pasta, say pesto. Pesto leaves didn't arrive in Europe until about 100 years ago. So what came before that, right? So I think we have strange worship to the notion of tradition to a degree that it becomes something a bit larger than what it actually is. Because to me, I only think tradition means a practice of handing things down. So what do we actually hand down from one generation to another that we hold so dearly? Heritage? Because heritage, features belonging to the culture of a particular society, such as traditions, languages, or buildings that were created in the past and still have historical importance. So, like you said, as I just said earlier, your grandmother's cooking, music, culture, books, plays, things that have been somehow recorded and handed down to a different generation. So, I'm not an anti-past person. I think that's established now because I was just talking shit about tradition just 2 seconds ago. So, I think what we mean by tradition can actually be explained better as heritage, because it's like we can actually pin down a point in time where that heritage took place. And then it's also and then it's more of a result of the practice that you were doing in order to create it. Like I said, images, words, sound, paintings, and thereby, because we have something is actually like a feature or a result of a practice, it can also be the starting point of referencing and interpreting. And I think that's what we reference to most of the time. Like you said earlier, like ao zai is actually a result. It's not a practice. Like you don't, you wear it, but then it's the physical thing that is the thing that is what is referenced most of the time. So tradition versus heritage. Tradition is an established practice, and we handed things down from generations to generations. But yeah, like we hand out heritage. So for me, heritage is more important, and it influences me more as a creative practitioner, because I think it's more of a talking point for me. Like it's something that we can actually grasp, because as a young person, I find it either hard or not exactly realistic to try and date back where my tradition starts. For example, I've recently decided that I don't go home for Tet. Controversial, I know. Any of you go home for Christmas? White people, come on. Take part. There you go. How do you feel about going home for Christmas?
That's alright, I don't have to spend money.
Lovely. But yeah, like for me, the whole thing about going home for Christmas is that I actually have to fly home, and then spend time with family members that I have no desires to see. And it all just becomes an ordeal for me. And I've realized that if I want to go see my family, I'm just going to book a flight instead of waiting for an occasion to create an excuse to fly home. So yeah, I'm making my own tradition, but I wouldn't call it like per se, because I'm not passing it down to anyone, nor am I preaching it. So yeah, right, let's go back to culture and heritage. So yeah, like I said, the work that I am about to present is more related to culture than to culture and heritage than to tradition. But before that, let's talk about me again. Hi. So I'm from Saigon originally. I refuse to use the term Ho Chi Minh City for obvious reasons. And I moved to Hanoi when I was 19. So, and then when I remember when I moved up here, my friends are just like, "You're only going to last here 6 months," and I was like, "Oh, come on, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be better than that." So I was really open-minded to see what it's like, because it's actually like my first time out of home, and I got intense culture shock from the way that food is served, from how people talk not in dialect because I speak with pretty good Hanoian accent, um, but in terms of like the nuances that they have whenever they say something, it doesn't necessarily mean the exact thing that they said. So it's like, can you say this again, but this time in actual Vietnamese, like the Vietnamese like without nuance. So yeah, and so there are just things that are practiced very, very differently from the same country. So I remember calling up my mom and was like, I don't think I'm fit to actually like go abroad because like I'm only 1,100 kilometers away and like I can't deal with this culture shock. So my mom was like, I told you, and yeah, 4.5 years later I'm still here. So I guess I'm doing something right. Or not. I don't know. Um, so, and there are things that I realize that are just a southern thing. Um, but at the same time, I was exploring like Hanoian culture and like heritage, and I think that gives me a better sense of what my heritage coming from the south is, and also it gives me like a better understanding of my identity as a southerner living in the north. So having a better understanding of my own heritage gives me a need to get in touch with my own culture. So yeah, I work as a designer slash typographer. So I think one of the first things that got into my radar was how letters look, and all of these are from Saigon. And the more you look into old signs, the more you see that there's actually a difference in sign makings all around Vietnam. And yeah, shout out to Huy from the Lost Type Vietnam for doing such a cool project and letting people getting in touch with the cultural heritage that is just in your everyday life. So yeah, this is like one part of the culture that I want to tap into. And then I remember that when I was in Saigon, I went to a DJ set where someone was playing pre-75 music from the south, and I was really hooked by it. So I started like listening more to it, and the whole time I was in Hanoi, it actually became something that I hold on to whenever I need like a sense of home. So yeah, so long story short, with all of the things that I was talking about and the music, I made this. It's a music book from before 75. Feel free to pass it around because I only have one copy to, combining with the audio in a songbook format. And and I think it really captures like my identity as a southerner, as a creative practitioner, as a typographer, as a bookmaker. So I think I was using tradition, like as in like people making sign, like people hand binding books, like transcribing song sheets, to rediscover and reinterpret my heritage, because it's actually it's more of a lost heritage now that because most of the music from that time is just gone in a way. So people so now there are projects that are trying to like re-archive all of the stuff from there, so that like yeah, I guess a younger generation like me will have a better grasp at that. In short, I think this piece of work is really my like my reinterpretation of heritage. I touch base on cultural work. There's actually more, so that you can just like see something else. There you go. Yeah. So that poster is a font that I made using just old signs, but the poster was made with risograph. And yeah, for those of you who may not know what risograph is, it's a kind of printing that was created because there was a lack of color, and it could be done for cheap, but not anymore. Now that artists have like rediscovered it, so that sheet was like 50,000 to make. So yeah, it's not exactly cheap anymore. Damn artists. Like, we really took something so cheap to make, because it was a way to do fancy photocopies in a way, and like now it's actually really, really expensive because no one does it anymore. So yeah, I guess that's another example of like reinterpreting heritage without doing it in an archival way, because I think there are a lot of traditional or heritage, so to speak, projects that just does it in an archival job. And I think that is personally my main difference between cultural and heritage. I think heritage, it can be a starting point of something anew, whereas tradition, I said culture before, sorry. Whereas tradition is a practice of doing the exact thing with slight interpretation, because then let's go back to the grandmother cooking's example, because I only have that one, and I think that one is the best one I have, so sorry. I love the fact that every chef, like when they get interviewed by like the inspiration of their restaurant, it's just like, oh, I learned it from like my grandmother's kitchen, yada yada yada, like taste of home, this and that. And I was like, interesting, my grandmother's a bad cook, so I didn't get to learn a lot from her. But then I realized that like what I learned from her, I reinterpret it in my own way. So there's not an exact replicate when you hand things down from one to another. So then in Vietnamese, there's a saying, say tam sao thất bản. It's just like you copy 3 times, but you get 7 different results. And I think that really resonates with the practice of passing down traditions. Because it's really hard to like find a point of reference. So I think for me, personally, I want things to be like a bit more exact when it comes to referencing. So I think heritage is more is more impactful for me. So I think I think referencing heritage can bring things from the past to a newer concept or a newer context. Like for this, for example, for this one, it actually I actually did a solo show with it, and I did some lights, I did video projections with found footage, and just glitching through with like all the typography that I made. And there's also a DJ set, quote unquote, where it was just all ambient noises from the streets of Saigon mixed with all the songs from the book. And then you can see like the QR codes in there, like you can actually scan it to go to the YouTube links of the book. You can't do it now because I haven't paid for it yet. I keep telling myself that when I sell like 10 copies, I'm actually going to like pay for that. and I've sold 20 and I still keep forgetting to like pay for it. I remember I received an email saying, hey, someone finally scanned your QR code and you haven't paid, so they couldn't access it. And I was like, right, it took 6 months for someone to actually scan it, so I kind of failed there. So yeah, now I don't think there's a point in me like having to pay for that anymore, because it looks fun, it looks new and modern. I think it serves the purpose. Yeah, so in short, what I think is important to archive heritage for the sake of like people like me to find a reference point for, I think we all should do something about it. We should share, create, we should breathe new life into it, or give it a newer context, because I think it's good to store culture, it's good to store tradition, but doing something with it is much more fun. So, and yeah.
So I have a question, because you're fairly untraditional in some respects as a Vietnamese person, but you're exploring traditions of type and even the music and things like that. So how do you balance that in terms of, you know, your life and your practice and as a designer and artist?
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So I think most of the heritage part from my practice comes from the fact that I don't live from home. So yeah, most of the time I'm homesick. So when it came to doing my grad project, I was like, right, I don't have a lot of time to actually like think of a fun project to do. So let's just go back to what I know of and what is really true to me. So yeah, and so that's why I came across. I decided to delve on that, and yeah, a year and a half later, I'm still talking about like the same project. I'm really milking it here, and so I think that's one aspect to it, and I think yeah, like we make new traditions all the time, without us realizing it or making a big deal out of it. Because I think my point about tradition is that we tend to regard it as more than it is. Like I said earlier, like I've decided that I'm just not coming home for TED from now on, and just like do it either before or after. I'm just gonna like leave the mayhem out.
But that will get you in trouble, right?
Is established. Not per se. I guess I have a pretty progressive family, so that my mum is not mad at me not going home for TED. So yeah, and but I think tradition also reflects in the way that we do things as well. Like for instance, my mum and I can cook the exact same dish, and the result can be just totally different because I interpret that in a different way than she does. So there's always that, and yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think like we make new traditions all the time, and I think it's also wired in our nature to try and compromise with what comes before us or what is established before us. So there's always that. Yeah, we're creators, we're not referencers. And I think, yeah, it's either tradition or heritage. It's always an ongoing conversation. It sparks a conversation now. It can do something to like a later generation. Maybe bookmaking is gonna be a thing again. And that's it. Thank you. Oh yeah, there's actually another one, because I prepared this slide when I was asleep. So yeah, and then So yeah, go back to like the whole breathing new life and breathing new context into it. So from a font, I made a postcard, I made a bag, because I believe in like wearable and accessible art. Is actually available to order, so that's why I put it in there, because I'm broke, guys. like I'm dropping hints as hard as I can now. And thank you for coming to my talk. Yes, only my second time doing like artist talk, so I'm still very awkward, and I should have made more eye contacts, but I'm blind, so yeah, I can't do it.